Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're all doing well today. Let's just take a minute and just come into this moment as best that we can. Just take a moment here to let go of your day and come back into your body. Here, we're going to be talking today about how we can find greater inner peace, how we can create it. Hey, Chris, good morning, all the way from Queensland. I hope you're well down there. Hey, Mark. Yeah, an extra hour of sleep. Glad you're here. Glad everybody's here. For those new to my lives, I'm Geoff Bell-Devaney, and I'm a mindfulness teacher. I'm in Western Massachusetts. I've been teaching mindfulness for more than 20 years, and what I'm going to be teaching today are things that I've learned that have brought me greater inner peace. And hopefully today will be an opportunity for you to find new ways of being in life, new ways of being with yourself that will help you find greater inner peace. Hey, Sulaiman, welcome. We're all over the globe here. So while we wait for the room to fill, let's just settle in as best we can here. Perhaps noting how you're feeling, noting what's alive in you in this moment, and doing your best to allow it to be. Being present here with whatever might be arising within you. Evie, hi, hey, good to see you. Great to have you and everyone here. Really great. So let's talk about inner peace. Let's talk about what that means and what that looks like and how we can experience more of it. We are clearly living through times of great change, politically and technologically, environmentally. There's a lot of things that can stir up our inner world, things that can take us away from a more peaceful existence. When things are going as we want them to go, we tend to be more at peace. But what I'm talking about today is a sense of peace that we can experience that goes beyond having things go our way. What I'm talking about today is finding a sense of inner peace born of meeting life in ways that are aligned with life, in ways that help us grow in acceptance and also in empowerment. So the first and main point of today's talk is working with our inner reality. The outer experience that we have, excuse me, when we're watching the news or when we're at work or when we're driving down the road, there's a lot of outer realities going on. Some of them we like. If it's sunny on our birthday and we have a picnic planned, we're going to be not as resistant. If we're driving to an important meeting and there's a traffic jam, we'll probably notice a certain degree of resistance arising. And I'm stating those two examples, and there's infinite number of examples, because it isn't so much the outer situation that we have to work with. Although, of course, there are times we can and we have to change our external reality. But the primary focus of today's talk is dealing with the emotions that arise as a result of our judgment of these external situations that we encounter. We, in many ways, can find ourselves caught in a place of resistance to what we think is the outer situation. And obviously, there are situations that we don't want to have happen, many of them. But as we continue along this inner path, we start to realize that we can't change these external realities often. Some of them we can, and if we can, we do so. But a lot of external realities, things that we really don't want to have happen, They're beyond our control. What's within our control is how we meet the emotions that invariably arise from change, from loss, from whatever we're experiencing. This is what we can control, and this is what we, on this spiritual path, have to focus on. We have to bring our focus to this inner reality. There's a direct correlation, of course, between these external events and the emotions that we feel. And all of us in this talk and around the world, we all have a slightly different perspective. So one man's or one woman's trash may be another man's or woman's treasure. That traffic jam that may piss us off if we're late for a meeting could be a blessing if we are not wanting to go somewhere. It could be our get out of jail card, right? And it's in seeing that perspective that we can start to realize that it isn't so much the external reality, but our perception of it. And we can see this in this country. It's very divided. There's certain people who are happy, and there's certain people that are unhappy the way that things are unfolding politically. Same with technologically. Yet all of us have a slightly different perspective that is shaped by our upbringing, our culture, our family, all of these different influences, right? If I'm walking down a city street in New York City and I'm looking at the buildings, I'm going to see them from a much different perspective than my friend who's an architect, for example. And it's this internal filter with which we take in the external reality that we also have to keep an eye on, because we can be so self-assured that our way, that what we're seeing is the ultimate reality, that is right. And of course, that's why we are in the state that we're in around the world with this division. For the purposes of this talk, we're not talking so much about politics or division or these sorts of things, but getting at the root of the human experience that creates this division, and not within these political realms necessarily, but within ourselves. The divisions that we experience within ourselves, meaning the separation that we experience within ourselves, is what we have to talk about, because again, it's this inner reality that is within our control to a certain degree. It's what we can directly influence. A lot of events going on around the world or in our lives, in our macro environment, these things, the flat tires we get, the unexpected bill, the sickness, whatever it may be, we can't control. What we can control is in here, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Hey, Nikki. Yeah, exactly. How we treat ourselves no matter what's going on. And I love that you mentioned that, because in many ways that is the focus of today's talk. It's how do we meet ourselves no matter what's going on. Hey, Blossom Violet, welcome. Welcome everybody. It's how we meet ourselves. It's how we meet reality as it's arising within us. And again, these external situations will they'll trigger us, they'll bring up emotions. And so how do we deal with those emotions? And it's how we deal with them that can either lead us down the same old path of resistance and frustration and helplessness, or lead us down a new path of liberation, of empowerment, and of inner peace. And so we focus inward. And we start to find, the more we look inward, that this emotional landscape is constantly changing. This emotional reality, the thoughts and the emotions, this inner world is constantly changing. Yet when some thoughts or emotions arise, we don't like it. And we cower, or we cover up. We run from them. But ultimately, we're not running from the emotions exactly. We're running from reality. We're running from life. And a big part of this talk is is working with reality for when the anger and the shame and the loneliness, these challenging emotions, when they arise, it's what we do with them. You know, it's how we meet them that makes a world of difference. One way of meeting them, again, keeps us in this egoic place of judgment, of resistance to reality. Another way of meeting them is one that can awaken us to a true sense of peace and inner power. And that's the one I'm going to be talking about today. You know, we'll be talking a little bit about the old ways, but we know how they are. We know how the mind works. We know that the mind wants what it wants and it doesn't want what it doesn't want. And it's in that wanting and not wanting that we can get lost, we can get caught, we can get into dark woods within us where we're lost in resistance. Yeah, this compassion does come in. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. This is where it comes in. Compassion for the suffering that we're experiencing. And it's how we express that compassion on a fundamental level. When our inner reality is astir with sensations and emotions that we don't want to experience, what do? And it's ultimately, in a nutshell, it's turning towards these experiences, and not just in a way where we are forcing ourselves to. It's in a way of wanting this inner reality that's been for so long making us run onto our phones and scroll when we're anxious, making us run to the cookie jar when we're afraid, making us live in a state of unhappiness and suffering. And my message today is these old experiences we're all familiar with fear, we're all familiar with sadness, loneliness. Again, all of these experiences that arise when life gives us things that we judge to be unfavorable. You win the lottery, you're probably going to feel, excited and happy. You meet someone new in your life and you feel a sense of excitement. You get a promotion that you wanted at work, you're going to feel good. You get fired, or someone breaks up with you, or you lose all your money, you're probably not going to be quite as happy again, right? So it's noting, again, the way the mind works, the way that the mind judges everything is good or bad, and letting that go, coming into our bodies. Because again, these experiences that we're judging good or bad, and this isn't to discount the reality that there are certain things that people do, that governments do, that businesses do, that countries do, that we do, that are amoral, clearly. And I'm not discounting that reality. And I'm not saying this is a path of acceptance of everything. And again, that blind acceptance, where we are not using the mind in a discerning way, can be a pitfall on this spiritual path. So much of this path, of course, is acceptance. But it can't be a blind acceptance. There is good and there is wrong. There's right and wrong. There's good and evil, right? If in terms of actions, right? I'm not talking about some spiritual beings or anything like that. I'm simply talking about events, okay? There's wise events and unwise ones that cause us and others suffering. And when those events are in our lives, we take action on them. We don't just accept that someone is hurting another or the environment in unconscionable ways. We stand up for what we value: truth, justice, liberty, freedom, equality, whatever it may be. But to find spiritual freedom, we can't get caught in resisting reality, even if it's something that we know is amoral, whether it's something someone else is doing or whatnot. But for the purposes of this talk, we focus to grow spiritually on the emotions, keeping in mind clearly that we can't change what a government is doing. We can vote, we can petition, we can take action. But much of what is outside of us, most, if not almost everything outside of us, is beyond our control. We can't control what anybody else says, what they do, what they think. Yet we try to. We try to act in ways that will, make people like us, for example. We try to control people. We try to control our environment. And the more that we grow spiritually, in my experience, we start to realize that the degree of control that we have is primarily limited to dealing with this inner reality. Yes, we can change our world. Yes, we can stand up for things that align with our values again. Yes, we can change our external reality. But for the purposes of this talk and the purposes of truly finding inner peace, we're doing that with the majority of our focus inward. And we're doing it in a way that is very, very courageous. This act of turning towards these challenging emotions, the anger, the frustration, the loneliness, the helplessness, the sadness, whatever it may be that's arising, to turn towards that is perhaps the most important thing that we can do on the spiritual path and in life. Because if we don't, we're living divided. We're living in a way where this whole half of our internal reality, all these emotions, we don't want to feel. We don't want to acknowledge them. So we get caught up in this loop of looking for pleasure, which makes sense. But it just takes us down this path of, like the hungry ghost they talk of, who can never get enough to eat. We can never find anything that's going to give us a lasting sense of fulfillment. We see this in, all around us. You watch Entertainment Tonight, and all of these stars, they get married and they get divorced. We see this in our own lives. What seems so wonderful changes in relationships often. And it's how we work with those relationships, how we meet them with reality, knowing that the mind is wanting things to be and stay a certain way and not wanting to see and experience other people's realities that don't align with our image of them, for example. But it's in turning towards ourself. It's in being with what's arising courageously that, in my personal experience, is one of the most profound things that we can do as humans, and especially those of us on a spiritual path. When we embrace, Nikki, when we embrace what we have long resisted, when we truly, truly welcome in that fear, when we truly, truly, dare I say, beg for it to be part of our reality, we just turn the whole game upside down. Because what we resist persists, right? Of course, right? It's like, we don't want to feel fear because it's uncomfortable. But if we can turn that whole pattern on its head by welcoming in what we've resisted, we start to experience much greater peace because we're not resisting part of reality, but more importantly, in that acceptance, in that courageous turning towards, with compassion, with humility, and with deep love and wanting, we turn towards these challenging parts of us. I was experiencing this morning. I felt some fear arise, just kind of random out of the blue. And I said, please come in. You're welcome. Using these words internally, we can get so caught up in old ways of resisting, of being stuck, that it sometimes takes a real mental sort of coaching of verbalizing. I'm not big on using the mind. I'm not big on affirmations. I don't use them. Anything that we can do to diminish thinking, in my personal experience, helps us grow spiritually. It helps quiet the mind. It helps reduce the number of emotions that get stirred up as a result. But in this case, voicing, this is something that I have done and occasionally still do, voicing when there's a challenging emotion, voicing internally, please, you're most welcome. I want you as part of my reality. As I say these words now, I feel a tingling on the front of my body, it's a sign that I experience when there's, I don't know how to describe it. It's a positive sign. It's almost like the resistance letting go. And it takes that intentionality sometimes to break the old resistant patterns of, oh, there's fear, and then we resist it, and then we start fearing the fear. And the more we fear the fear, the bigger it builds. And if we instead can turn towards it and literally say, please, please, I want you to be part of my reality, then we can start down this new path of freedom. Then we can start to shift this old unconscious way of picking and choosing what we want to feel. And this isn't about staying in a state of suffering. If there's something we can do, we do it. And I'm talking today really on a fundamental way about how we meet these emotions. And my experience this morning can be one that can be instructive, and it's one that's it's one of the more courageous things that I've done, and it's one of the more spiritually liberating things that I've done, to truly, truly welcome in those emotions. After that brief experience today, I felt a tremendous degree of power, of peace, of wholeness. This talk is about how we find inner peace, but there's such power in simply welcoming in these old emotions that we've resisted for so long. Because when we resist them, we're inherently in a state of fear. When we turn towards them, we're in a state of love. We're in a state of acceptance. We're in a state of being with reality, truly being with it in a way that can open our hearts and open our minds and get us out of this old little mousetrap we get caught in so understandably easy, because the fear is like, oh, I don't want to feel it. And it's like, yeah, bring it. Bring it. Hey, Annette, hey, welcome. Hey, Laura, I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Yeah, Nicole, I'll get to that question in a sec. That's a great question. Gary, yeah, we all are. It's what the mind does. That's why we need to be aware of how the mind is so judgmental, right? Hey, I'm good, Annette, I'm good. I want to share another experience that I had that's along the same veins here, and then I'll get to your question, Nikki. And anybody, throw your questions in the chat. I want to make this as interactive as possible. But I want to share with you an experience that I had just over a year ago. I was on a 3-week silent retreat, and there weren't a lot of thoughts on the retreat, but there was a lot of fear energy. And I'm not sure why. Sometimes they say retreats they can be like a purifying process. A lot of fear. I sat with so much fear it was 3 weeks, 21 days, and it was past the 2-week mark, and I was sitting with much, much fear. I don't know what it was from. Old fear, arising. I was being with it as gently and as mindfully as I could, and it was wearing me down. Even though I wanted to be with it, in my experience, old fear can come with old resistance that's deep, 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 that we're not even aware of. So even though the adult me was wanting to be with this old energy, there weren't a lot of thoughts, a lot of energy. There was some deep resistance in me. And after 2 weeks of this and only sleeping, 4 hours a night. I was really, I was surprised at how challenging that retreat was, because I've been on retreats where there's much stillness. You never know what you're going to get when you go on those retreats, when the volume of life is turned down and the onion gets peeled and stuff comes up, you know. Anyway, it was probably day 15 or 16. And I remember I looked in the mirror and I said, okay, if this is going to be 3 weeks of sitting with pure fear, let's do it. And it shifted instantly. It went, whoo. And it was an internal commitment, an internal, okay, let's just do this. Bring it. I'm not leaving. I'm not going home. I'm not running from this. I don't have any phone to scroll on. I don't have anything to do. Yeah, I could go in my mind, or I could skip meditating, but no, I'm not going to do that. But the point is, and I'll never forget that moment, it was looking in the mirror and saying, okay, this is bloody hard. If this is what it's going to be, I accept it. And it shifted everything. And subsequently, I heard a teacher tell me that Joseph Goldstein, who started the Insight Meditation Center in Barre, Massachusetts, where the retreat was, and I heard him say this on a talk I listened to recently as well, that one of the things that has been a frequent visitor on his path is fear. And similarly, when he said, okay, if my life will be about this, it went way down. And I'm just sharing this to speak to the power of courageously welcoming in this fear. And it's in doing it I've subsequently learned and practiced in a way that isn't just, yes, I'm going to want it, which is part of it, like I said before, like my experience this morning. Hey, welcome, come in, come in, come in. But it's really having the courage to feel it, because it's in feeling it in the body that fear, that's where it wants to go. That's where we feel emotions, right? We don't feel them in the mind when we're thinking. We feel them in our body. And that's why bringing our awareness here and keeping it, especially when challenging emotions arise, welcoming them in with gentleness, compassion, courage, like a child that's been lost, these parts of us that have been lost. Welcome, come home, come home, come home. Then we stop getting stuck in resistance. Then, like I experienced today, our energy shifts and it's like, it's like you're trying to keep this door closed. And when you're like, fine, come on in. It's like a weight off your chest. And when that weight is off your chest, that weight of resistance is gone. Whether it's looking in the mirror and saying, if this is what these 3 weeks, or in Joseph Goldstein's case, this life, whatever it may be, is going to be this fine. There's a deep acceptance of reality in that moment. And it's in dropping the resistance that we find greater inner peace and power, in my experience. And that makes sense, right? I mean, if you're resisting something, you're going to feel tired. You're not going to feel as empowered. And you're going to stay in that cycle of fearing the fear. And ultimately, the more we can embrace it, we realize we're way bigger than it. We are the embrace. We're the love. We're the empowered acceptance that can turn towards these challenging emotions like fear or sadness or shame or anger and welcome them in. And when that resistance drops, peace arises and power and presence, invariably, right? Because we're not caught up. We're not fractured in these ways. Yeah, and it's, so Nikki, that question, how does it help you process them? So my experience this morning, and it was just a small, it wasn't even a big thing. I was actually meditating. It was like, there was some fear came up. And just turning towards it, it helps it process, because if we're keeping the door closed, that emotion, that energy, let's not even call it emotion, it's just energy, right? We're just this field of awareness experiencing energy. Some we want to feel and others, energy we don't. When we can drop that wall, let life in, then it starts to process, because we can spend our lives living so small, because we don't want to feel fear. An object we can be afraid of, something. Doesn't matter what it is. It can get so buried in us. And it's in opening to that. And again, feeling it. And it's hard. It's scary. This isn't like, oh, okay, cool, Geoff, I'm just going to go, get my party hat on and feel that fear when it arises. This is in my experience, the hardest thing we can do. And it's the most empowering and the most spiritually liberating, because it gets us out of this whole pattern of resistance, this whole pattern of picking and choosing, wanting. This is what gets us out of craving and aversion. This is what helps us get out of that state that Rumi talked about of wrongdoing and right doing. This is right, this is wrong, these emotions are good, these are bad, and then we start to find ourselves in this field. And that's this energy. When I do this personally, and I know this is really aligned with a lot of trauma work, this somatic work, when we can turn, we don't need to do this all in one thing. It's anytime fear, even little fear arises, we can take this bit by bit. But that is that release that I experience, that tingling, this warmth, this release. And that's how these emotions start to get processed, in my experience. It reminds me of one of my favorite poems. By Rumi, The Guest House. Our body being the guest house. He says, this being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, or every moment, right? A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Rumi says, to welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. If we remember that we're a guest house, and these visitors, these emotions, they don't last forever, even the hard ones. Nothing lasts forever. If we see these emotions as guests, how do we want to treat these guests? Do we want to push them away? That, I understand, is the human condition. That is these old patterns that we can so easily get caught up in, resisting certain guests. But if we want to grow spiritually, if we want to not be lost in fear, if we want to live much more consistently emotionally, much more in a state of stillness, peace, and power. There's not much power when we're resisting fear. When we're running to, whatever it is we run to when it arises. It's this peace and power that we find by welcoming these guests. That's how we grow spiritually, in my experience. And I understand fear well. I've sat with it on many silent retreats. I understand it well. And hopefully some of what I'm sharing can give you a shortcut so you don't have to stumble along, And it is, in many ways, courage and compassion and gentleness that are the key that opens that door so that all of these guests can come in. It's with courage that we break these old patterns. It's with compassion that we meet them. And it's with gentleness and ease that we replace these old, familiar and often addictive mental states of being in a state of fear. We replace them with ease, with gentleness, and it's in that way we can really start to awaken, in my experience. And it takes work. It's not easy. It's perhaps the hardest thing, because we're in many ways hardwired to, when fear arises, resist. It doesn't feel good. But again, the more we start doing this work gently, the more we start to realize that we're bigger than our fear. And when we realize that, it gets easier and easier because we know that guest in the guest house isn't going to stay forever. And the better we treat him, curiously, the less he's going to come. If I'm resisting fear, it's going to keep wanting to come in. Knock, 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 knock. This old fear. When I open my arms, my heart to it, you can just imagine the fear just like, oh, okay, I'm welcome. You can imagine life saying, oh, here's a being who's welcoming all of these emotions. And again, yes, if something is causing you emotions, we don't keep banging our head against the wall and say, oh, it just keeps hurting over. We can affect change. But I'm talking about a more fundamental way of being, because fear is going to arise regardless, we can be as empowered and make as many changes in life as we want. Fear will still arise, or shame, or loneliness, or sadness, as will happiness and joy, all of these other emotions which we can cling to, which is subject for another talk, I suppose. But it's ultimately in working with these challenging emotions that can, in my experience, give us a real boost spiritually. It's sitting with these hard experiences and turning to them that can help us grow. Hey, Nikki, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate it. And your and everyone else's comments. It really helps create an environment here of inclusion and curiosity. And we'll get to these questions here and these comments. Yeah. Hey, Laura, things are coming to the surface lately. Okay, that makes sense, right? It does. And I love the way you said that. In my opinion, it is the more that we do this work, these old fears that we experience as children or past lives, if you want to believe that. Hey, Mim, hi. Whatever, we don't even need to label these fears. We don't have to label them. We don't, and I would say we don't want to get into, oh, that's past life, or that's this or the other. There's times for that. Therapy can be helpful with healing childhood or other traumas, of course. In my experience, we want to get away from this whole thinking business and stay here. The guest house is here, okay? This is the gatekeeper of the guest house that may not be helping us. It may be like, oh, you don't want to feel that, or yeah, let's feel that. We're just snipping that old small way of being. We want to break free of ego. And the way we do it is by staying in our bodies, in my experience, with gentleness and compassion and courage. And it's when things come to the surface, as they do. Like that fear that I experienced on that retreat last summer, it was very unexpected. Very unexpected. I was looking forward to a 3-week bath in stillness and peace, to be honest. And I got a 3-week scrub down in fear that brought me to a place of stillness that I haven't experienced before in my life. We don't know what life's going to bring, right? And so in that experience, for me, that fear, I don't know why it arose. Again, there weren't a lot of thoughts. I couldn't ascertain what it was. You can sometimes tell why you're feeling it. It's just a lot of energy. So when things arise, we just accept them, because what else are we going to do? And we can do things. We can do yoga. We can go for a walk. We can do journaling. We can exercise. We can do all these things. What I'm talking about here is clearly just a Buddhist type approach to when you're experiencing these emotions. How do we deal with them? There's lots of things we can do to affect change. But what I'm talking about is the deep fundamental ways that we can be with these experiences throughout the day that can laughing meditations, yeah. Totally. Um, so let's see here. Hey, Jennifer Doherty, welcome, welcome. Uncertainty. Oh, Nikki, sorry, I missed. That was a while back. I'm not sure what that relates to. Yeah, welcome everybody. Hey, Laura, found more feelings coming, but feeling tired makes it difficult to be with them. When we're tired, it's much more challenging to be with these emotions. Absolutely, absolutely. It's harder to do anything when we're tired. But sometimes when we're tired, it can present an opportunity to surrender, to let go into these challenging experiences. Yeah. And if we're not in a very good environment, that's a great point as well. Hey, champion, right back at you, Nikki. Oh, I appreciate, Nicole, hearing that bravery is inspiring to you. I really appreciate it. We're all brave in our own ways, and the more that we can be vulnerable and share these moments of courage, we can change we can change the world. And it's being brave in these ways that to me are what can really help us individually grow and can also help us shift things, in terms of how we meet others, in terms of how we are in reality. And that ripples out around the world. When we're lost in fear, resistance, we're not going to be the same person that meets the world from a place of greater stillness and peace. And when we meet the world from a place of stillness and peace, everything changes in different ways, right? So this work is fundamentally important for us and for the world, right? Because the more we are present and peaceful and empowered, less in our heads, open-hearted, then every interaction starts to make the world, we have a tremendous impact on the world, through these little moments, right? Hey, Ren, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. And good to have you here. Yeah, definitely, Laura, a safe place to feel it all. That's why a meditation practice can be really helpful. When we can have that time to build this capacity to be with these emotions, then we can start to have that degree of safety. We can start to carry it throughout the day. This work does benefit greatly by practicing it, of course. It's like going to the gym. You got to kind of go more and more if you want to notice any change. And this is especially true with these old conditioned patterns of cowing to fear. It's it's brave and courageous and important work. Yeah, and that never fear, right? And if you're fearing the fear, I'm really glad you mentioned that. If we notice ourselves fearing the fear, we welcome in the fearing the fear, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, there's fear. Oh, I'm. This is how we get even bigger when we can start to embrace not only the emotion but the unconscious reaction to it. Then we're like we're grounding ourselves even deeper in a place of awareness. It's like, oh, I'm watching the fear arise. I'm watching the resistance to it, and I'm just holding it all, holding all of those old ways of understandably wanting to run from discomfort and pain. Hey, Blossom, thank you. Yeah. Hey, Nicole, is self-trust or lack of enough self-trust is self is self-trust? Where did it go there? Is self-trust or lack of enough self-trust may cause us stress? Like, can I handle feeling this? Totally. This is why it's a process. The more that we get familiar with when challenging emotions arise, turning towards them with courage, compassion, gentleness, intentionally welcome them in. Hey, yes, come in, please. And again, as I say that, I feel this tingling in my body. it's that wanting, that deep wanting, not only these challenging emotions, but life that can liberate us. Because when we're resisting fear, we're resisting life. And when we're choosing it, wanting it, then we're saying yes to reality. And this isn't a blind acceptance, this is an empowered acceptance. If stuff's going down that isn't cool, people hurting others or whatever, we don't just turn away. The more we can be here, the more we can empower ourselves, and we can follow our hearts, and we can start to really find our voice, find our stillness, and affect the world in a myriad of ways, right? But the more that we do this, the more we start to trust ourselves, the more we start to trust that when uncomfortable emotions arise, we're not going to betray ourselves by running to the ice cream or the bottle of wine or our phones or whatever it is, which understandably we do because these emotions are challenging. But every time we do it, as we start growing in mindfulness, we start to see that we are betraying ourselves. And I'm not saying there's not a time to rest or be on our phones or have ice cream or whatever it is. It's how we're using these things. And I know really well, the more that we're able to see these unconscious reactions, the ways that we run from these emotions or cover them up, there's shame there. It breeds little drops of shame because we know that we're hiding. And we don't need to hide anymore. And we don't want to, because ultimately this energy, this sadness, loneliness, whatever it is that we don't want to be with, is life. It's reality. And it's in meeting it with courage, compassion, gentleness, love, that we start to awaken, because we're not resisting those parts of life that we don't want to feel. And it's in many ways as simple as that. But as simple as that as it is, it's also oftentimes the most challenging thing to do, because no one taught us how to be with fear. No one wants to feel fear or shame or jealousy or sadness or anger or resentment or whatever it may be. The key to our freedom, in my experience, the key to our freedom is that it's like that Rumi quote. It's using that key to open the door to these challenging emotions that understandably as humans we don't want to feel. And the more that we can do that, peace arises, right? If we're resisting, we're not going to be at peace. And vitality arises because we're not, wasting so much energy. And we won't be running from ourselves. And then our sense of trust and our sense of being grounded and meeting reality increases. And that's a self-trust that can only be found by meeting life on its own terms. And there's a tremendous opportunity for surrender there. Because when fear arises and we welcome it in, like Rumi said in the guest house, in that poem, then we're saying yes to life. And then we start to realize that this fear is temporary, just like all the other emotions, the happiness. And then we realize that they come and they go, so we're not them. The thoughts come and they go, so we're not them. And we slowly start to wake up to the fact that we are this field of presence, of love, that within which all of these emotions arise. But we can't ever know that when we're stuck in this cycle of fearing the fear. We can't live in a state of peace and presence. The more that we do this, the degree of peace and presence and power that we feel, this power that comes from welcoming in this emotion, this energy, not resisting it, the peace that comes from not fighting with life. This is, in my personal experience, it grows and deepens and broadens. And the more it deepens and broadens, we start inherently wanting to let go of thinking, wanting to let go of these old ways, these old resistant ways that have kept us stuck. And it takes practice, and it takes courage, and it takes realizing that we deserve to feel, we need to reclaim these parts of us. We need to, if we want to grow spiritually, we have to, because otherwise we're fighting with life. And when we fight with life, we're not going to be at peace, right? You know? And that's how we grow in trust, because it's like, all right, then we're not so buffeted around. If we're resisting fear all the time, when it arises, we're going to be like, yikes, I'm out of here. I'm running to the bottle of wine or the cookie jar, busying ourselves or whatever it is. But if we know that fear is going to arise and it's just part of our reality, it's not going to pin us to the wall or scoop us up in it, then we grow in trust, and we're here in this moment. And then these emotions are just, they're like the weather. More and more and more, it comes and it goes, and we don't get so, swept away by the by the inner storms. We're the harbor of acceptance, within which they arise. Hey Lau, thank you for the donation and for being here. Really appreciate everybody being here and all of your comments. This is wonderful. Yeah, Sulaiman, what is time to love unconditionally? Ultimately, that's what it is, right? Acceptance, it's being with what is, being with reality. Yeah. Yeah, it can be challenging to feel these emotions, though. And that's why it takes practice. It takes practice, Yeah, sitting with them and drinking tea. So we're going back a while here, but yeah, Nikki, acknowledging all parts of ourselves. Yes. And again, the more we do this, we realize again that the fear, whatever the emotions are, they're not who we are, and they're temporary. And that makes it even easier to sit with them too. Yeah, put a smile on your face when the fear arises. I love that, Sulaiman. It's really the image that I have, like this morning when I was meditating and there was some fear. It's almost like an adult meeting a child who's scared, which is, makes sense because a lot of this fear is old fear, often from when we were children, and it's meeting that, like, that's where the compassion, the courage, if your child gets hurt, you don't get scared and run the other way, you run to them. And so much of this work is, instead of running to the ice cream or whatever it is, we run to ourselves. And we run to ourselves with open arms, with courage and compassion, as we would a child who was afraid. We soothe them. We say, come here. What's going on? How are you? Hey, we soothe them. And this is in many ways very similar. When fear arises, we soothe those often old parts of us with, hey, it's okay here. Please come here. Please, I got you here, in that vein. Hello, little sadness, and hello, little joy. Joy can be hard too. We can be very familiar with fear, for example, or sadness, or loneliness, or helplessness. Opening to joy is also part of this path. Tonight we're talking more about these challenging emotions. Invariably joy does arise when we're not resisting reality. Joy is our inherently natural state. Not as Geoff per se, but as this this awareness that we all are. We get so caught up in identity and ego and thoughts and feelings. The more we watch them come and go, we realize that they aren't who we are. And the more that we let go of them and meet them in these ways, in my experience, joy naturally arises and peace arises. And then it gets easier to let go of those old familiar ways oftentimes. And I'm speaking from experience of being in resistance, of being familiar with fear. The more joy we allow into our lives, the more that we practice in this way, the more joy arises, and the more we allow it, then that can be familiar. And then it's like, oh, okay, I think I like feeling good, Instead of, oh, there's the fear. Well, you know what I'm going to do? Instead of resisting it, which is going to make me not happy, I'm going to welcome it like a child. Oh, and I feel empowered and present and more joyful, Hey, Nikki, head nods, yeah. Yeah. Hey, Nikki, if the fear I felt was centered around uncertainty, perhaps, I don't know what it was about, other than just, again, they sometimes say those retreats are just a purification process. Okay. Okay, Nikki. Just scrolling back here. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what it is. It doesn't matter where it's arising from. When we're meditating, meditation can breed insight and we can realize things that are in our lives that are creating these emotions. And sometimes we don't know. Hey, Vineet, that's good. I'm glad that it's helpful. And I wish you continued ease through what might be a challenging experience. Hey, Ren, yeah, welcoming. It's like this. It's like in my personal experience, in the way that I practice, is seeing it as a child. Come in, be here. And really that's just saying life, yes, I want this part of reality, but seeing it as a child, as a part of us, holding our fear can be really, really liberating. Oh, I get it. Oh, the welcoming my fear. Right. Yeah, it is a perfect typo, Ren. Totally. Baby steps. Baby steps. Yes, this is retraining the way that we are in life. Gently. Hey, Kathleen, I'm glad that this is resonating with you. Yeah, Laura. Okay, yes. The joy and then sadness. This noticing the different changing emotions can help us hold them lighter. We don't get so freaked out when challenging ones arise, and we don't get so hanging on to them either. Yeah, Suleiman, in the words of David G., we're all just conduits of love. Yeah, right? Gary, yes, may I be healthy, happy, and safe, and may I live with ease and be peaceful and live without suffering. We'll touch on that as well, that this loving kindness practice. Yeah, sweets make me happy. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Kelly, your first time. Hey, welcome. Oh, I'm glad that you're here. Oh, what if we don't know just what it is that I'm resisting? I know I'm grieving, and it's brought up several emotions. You lost your mom 4 months ago, and I have so much coming up. Sadness is overwhelming now. I'm very sorry for your loss. Very sorry. I can only imagine how challenging that must be. And I'm sending you much love and compassion. And I understand what it's like to grieve. And I understand what it's like to be feeling so many different emotions. That's why this practice, to speak directly to that, two things come to mind. The first is a phrase. I don't recall who said it, perhaps a Thai monk or a Tibetan monk. He said, let your heart break wide open. Let your heart break wide open, and it will reveal a core of love unbroken. Let your heart break wide open, and it will reveal a core of love unbroken. And I kept that. Well, the second thing that comes to mind is to be, especially during this challenging time, Kelly, really, really, really gentle with yourself, and allowing the roller coaster of emotion to flow, the anger, the resentment, the frustration, whatever may be arising. It's working. It's just do your best. In my experience, when I have experienced grief, to allow these emotions, to understand that there's going to be certain, I would recommend looking at, perhaps you have, but looking at the stages of grieving. I'm not a grief counselor. I've been through heartbreak. I understand what it's like to grieve loss. There are certain stages. And to recognize that as humans, we go through certain stages when we're grieving, whether it's a partner, a child, a parent, whatever it may be. I found it helpful to look at those, to understand that those different stages are part of the reality, and that sometimes life is just damn hard. And oftentimes when it's damn hard like that, is to be really, really gentle with ourselves. Understand that we're in pain, and to allow as best we can these emotions, to be present and be as soft and as gentle and as kind to ourselves, because what you're going through, I can imagine, is very challenging. And in these challenging moments, gentleness is oftentimes something that we can learn to rely on. It can be the consistent that can help us realize that it's okay to feel the anger, the shame, the sadness, or the anger, the resentment, the grief, and to let our hearts break wide open, and to allow the breaking open to happen, to allow these emotions to be present, because they're gonna be, and we can do things, we can go for walks, we can do all these things, but from this mindfulness based place, it's in allowing the pain to welcome it, to be with it gently, that we can realize beneath all of this pain, there is a core of love unbroken, and it often takes our hearts breaking open, in my personal experience, to access this deep core of love that we are. And again, I'm sending you much, much, much compassion and peace, but just be gentle. It takes time, and there's others, the comments coming in here too are so helpful. The wild edge of sorrow, April's recommending. It's wonderful. You're not alone. Humans experience this. You will get through it. You will. It's oftentimes, in my experience, when we're challenged the most, that we find a real strength and resiliency, and we really start to awaken to our potential to be with these challenging emotions in ways that help us awaken to a place that's deeper, a broader, a more compassionate, open heart. Yeah. Nicole, Nikki, I'm not familiar with the 7 stages, but yeah, there's much out there, and I'm sure on Insight Timer too. In addition to the book that April recommended, this grieving work can be, in my experience, some of the more challenging things that as humans we experience. You know, all of this work that we do when there's small things to grieve, when the teapot breaks, when the frustration arises from a flat tire, which in no way compares to these major losses that we can experience as humans. We can practice grieving. We can practice accepting reality. We can practice accepting the emotions that arise. And we can start to also embrace the impermanent nature of life. The Buddha said that everything that we know and love, everything that we hold dear to our hearts, we will one day be separated from. And this is true for all of us. We will all be separated from those things and those people that we love in one way or the other. And so there's a deep humanity there, a deep commonality that this practice of being with these emotions in these ways can help us use our suffering. Joseph Goldstein, again, the founder of IMS, Insight Meditation Society, one of the preeminent mindfulness teachers in the world, he frequently says, don't waste your suffering. Meaning, don't cover it up with this or that or the other thing. Work with it. It's a beautiful opportunity to deeply, deeply grow. Oftentimes, like that 3-week retreat I was on, and a 6-week one shortly after, where I was heartbroken and I sat with tremendous grief, which ultimately was about childhood grief, curiously enough. Those profoundly challenging retreats, experiences of sitting with deep, deep fear and grief and sadness and whatever else it may be that I had been, ones that were ready to be felt. And being with them in those ways were, even though those were the two of the hardest retreats and experiences of my life, they shaped me and liberated me more than almost any other experience in my life. And it's because I was tending to those emotions. It's not easy, But there's, again, let your heart break wide open and it will reveal a core of love unbroken. There's deep peace within us. When we don't want to feel the little fears, it's hard enough, but when the big ones come, sometimes we don't have a choice but to feel with them because they're so big. And so we may see that and any other suffering as a blessing. In my experience, even though it is profoundly, profoundly, profoundly hard, and my heart goes out to you and anyone here, all of us, we're all suffering in different ways, and we've all, had all of these challenging experiences to varying degrees. But you're not alone in that suffering or here. I know we're all sending you our love, and you'll get through this clearly and grow through it. Yeah, it's hard to talk about. This could be a good time to access resources, groups or whatnot too. It's important to realize this work is something only we can do. Only we can turn to these challenging emotions, but we don't have to do it in isolation. We're in a community here, and there's resources we can reach out. Therapists could be very, very supportive during challenging times. You know, there's we don't want to fall into helplessness. We want to empower ourselves while riding these heavy waves of some of the more challenging experiences that humans can experience. And we can know that those waves will settle eventually. Invariably, they will. You know, is it okay to teach children? I think it's absolutely okay to teach children. There's ways to do it. You know, I don't think a child would understand what we're talking about here exactly. I think it's the most important thing we can do, Vineet, is to teach children that their emotions are okay, that whatever they're feeling is okay. That, to me, is how we raise children who are secure. That's how we raise children who are much less apt to distract themselves with things to cover up emotions. That's how we help children feel grounded and secure. And if we did more of that, this world would be much different. And children have a profound capacity to understand, a profound capacity. But it has to be done in ways that meet them where they're at, of course. But I think it's you know, we spend years teaching them mathematics and all these other things that, in my personal opinion, are much less important than understanding that these emotions are things that we don't need to be afraid of. And in fact, by meeting them, we can, find freedom. Hey, Nikki, okay. Okay, Kelly, yeah. Yeah, so much of this work, in my experience, is meeting old fears and pains that understandably we have been carrying our whole lives, all of us, whether we've experienced major trauma or not. Living in this world, just look around us, turn on the news. A child sees what's on the news. It's scary. Fear, right? We all are, we're all carrying these fears. And it's our work as adults to, in many ways, meet these fears. That 6-week retreat that I was on, hey, Kathleen, welcome. The retreat was at IMS, the Insight Meditation Society in Barrie. That 6-week retreat that was maybe the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life was sitting with old childhood fears, griefs, loneliness, shame from divorce, from emotionally unavailable parents, all of these things. And it's in being with that. Some of our deepest needs are to be seen, to be loved. When we can give ourselves love, when we can see our pain and those fears and be with them, then we're on the path to freedom. We're looking for love. We're looking to feel good. It's being seen and heard, meeting these old pains, these old fears, these old things that we all experience that can really help liberate us, Yeah. Laura, we need to be wise in who we seek support from, right? Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of spiritual teachers that I have, read about or whatever that could use a therapist. There's a lot of people still caught in the mind who are teaching all these things. And what we're talking about today is liberation from the mind, liberation from unconsciousness. It's waking up to living in a way that's very much normal to who we are, but it's much different because we're free. We're here, we're present, and then we can start, coming into the world in much different ways. So I love that comment, Lori. Yeah, make sure that you're, seeking support from someone who's qualified. I highly recommend somatic therapy. It's a wonderful dovetail to this work, and in fact, it's very much the same. This being in the body with gentleness and compassion is profoundly healing, in my experience. Yeah, waves, right? Yeah, right? Playing with kids. I mean, kids are in the moment. Little kids, you can see it in their eyes. They're not up here yet. We sit them in a desk for 12 years. The recent study, or not a recent study, an old study by NASA that measured children's creativity they were at like the 97th percentile in kindergarten, like the most creative, potent beings. And like by seventh grade, they were down to, I forget exactly, but like the 40th percentile. By grade 11, they were, down in the 27th percentile or something. We spend 12 years having kids more and more think, and we forget. We lose ourselves, right? And it's in many ways, this work brings us back to that place of being curious, being present, being with these emotions as they arise, feeling them, crying, laughing, whatever the emotion may be. Children are a beautiful example of being of how we once were, but we get understandably so off track in this modern world. We all know, and that's why this work of coming back into the body can help us, and feeling these emotions can help us become curious like children. When we let go of thinking, when we stay here, we open our hearts, we free our minds, and then every moment starts to become much more precious, much more wonderful. And then we interact with those in our lives much more authentically because we're not distracted. And even those challenging situations, we can be with them in ways that are much more real because we are much more real. We're not, pretending, Be the buffalo that runs. Oh, I've heard this quote before. Yes, I love this. Be the buffalo that runs into the storm, facing challenges head on. Like a buffalo charging into a storm means confronting difficulties directly rather than avoiding them. This proactive approach can help minimize suffering and lead to quicker resolutions. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's turning like a courageous buffalo who's welcoming her lost calf. Loneliness, fear, come, welcome, come in. I've got you, I've got you, I've got you. Then we turn towards the storm, and it's that storm that cleanses us, that frees us, that brushes off over and over again and again these old patterns, these old egoic ways of resisting reality. It's how we awaken out of the stream, out of our minds. Okay, Mary Lou, that's good advice. Lynn Fraser, okay, great. Yeah, Sandy, high school, be quiet and conform. Right? Yeah. Hey, Nikki, I'm so grateful that has been helpful. I appreciate all your comments, everyone's comments, and for being here. Hey, Lola, welcome. Can fatigue be considered an emotion? I think it sure can. If you're feeling fatigued, let's almost not even call it emotion. Let's call it what we're experiencing in this body. If I'm feeling depleted, low energy, we can meet that. And the more we're able to meet our emotions, then we can also meet what they need. Not only is this work about being gentle and meeting these emotions, welcoming them in, like that baby buffalo calf. Hey, you're lost in the storm, come back. That's how we reclaim parts of ourselves. And the more we do that, then we become whole and grounded. And we start to realize what we need to do. We realize how we can change our life so that we can not have to feel those emotions if we are aware we're feeling fatigued. Again, we don't even need to label it as emotion. It's just like, oh, this body is feeling this way. What can I do? Well, then we can rest. Then we can realize what our needs are much more clearly. When we're doing this old dance of avoiding emotions, we almost don't even sometimes know what we need. but the more we can live in reality and meet these emotions, these experiences, whether it's exhaustion or grief, joy, loneliness, we can much better not only be with them, but we can start to do what we need to do to meet our needs. The more we're in touch with our emotions, our feelings, the more we can realize our needs. So this work has many, many beautiful offshooting paths. We grow in self-awareness, we grow in insight and wisdom. We start to recognize what we're needing, what we're feeling, and then we can start to get our own needs met, and then we grow even more in empowerment. Hey, Annette, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. And for your comments. Thank you all so much for being here. And I hope that what I've shared has been of help to you on your journey. Hey, Lola. Bruce Lipton talks about children in the first 7 years of life. Okay. Thank you for that. Kelly, I'm glad to hear that. You're not alone. And this will pass. Yeah. Life can be damn hard. And that's even the more reason to be gentle with ourselves. And that's our superpower. That's our key in many ways to awakening. Gentleness. You throw in some courage and some compassion and a desire to not let these old fears or challenging emotions run our lives, then we can start walking down this new path, this path of freedom, this path that leads us to, like Rumi said, beyond the fields, beyond all wrongdoing and all right doing, there is a field. And it's this work that can help us discover that field of peace and presence and power. And it's doing this work, this gentle, compassionate, and courageous work that can help us realize that this field of presence, this field of stillness, of ease, is something that we can spend more and more time in. Yeah, it is hard sometimes. We can be very hard on ourselves. We can also be very gentle with ourselves. And when we're suffering, when life is hard, when we turn on the news and it freaks us out, in my personal experience, the best thing we can do before we do anything is to tend to ourselves, even if it's just for a moment. That gets us out of that reactionary loop and down this new path of wise action and integrating all these emotions. So. Yeah, you're so welcome, Kelly. Wishing you nothing but ease and healing. And so grateful for you, grateful for everybody, and for all of your comments here. I feel the sense of community here. I love it. And it's everyone's vulnerability, sharing their challenges, that reminds me of my own humanity and gives me the permission more and more to do this work as well. We are all human. We don't want to feel these challenging emotions. We can be embarrassed by them, but they are the key. And we pick up that key by turning towards them, by walking towards them, by running towards ourselves instead of the ice cream or the bottle of, no. So I'll stay on for a bit if there's any questions, but thank you all so much. You're not alone on this journey. Yeah, Laura, right? Yeah. 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 And it gets easier and easier the more that we practice. It's like changing old ways, you know, replacing fearing fear with loving fear, if that makes sense. It's not even loving it, it's just being with it with compassion and not changing it, wanting it as it is. The more we do that, then life here is more and more how it is. And then we can start taking it in and resting and giving to it in ways that are heartfelt because we know ourselves much better.